Hello everyone, and a very warm welcome to today's global conversation from the Marketing Society. I'm delighted to be introducing today's session. I love these global conversations, and I know from speaking to members that a number of you are enjoying these opportunities as well, these opportunities for us all to come together and share some perspectives from around the world. At a time when we can't travel as much as we'd like, sharing the stories and the insights from different regions can help stimulate our thinking, help us connect in different ways, and certainly give us some ideas and some inspiration to take into our everyday work. And today's topic is something that I find particularly interesting, and I'm looking forward to talking through with our great speakers today. We're talking about upskilling today, one of those words that is used to indicate the fact that all of us in business, in leadership, in marketing, all of us are iterative processes. We need to keep learning. We need to keep developing, and particularly in a very, very fast moving, fast changing and challenging world, we need to make sure that we and our teams are learning and moving fast. But there are challenges around that. And there are smart ways of doing it, and there are new ways of doing it. And what we're going to be talking about today is how do we make sure that that continues to happen in the right way, especially when people are busy, especially when people really need it. And I'm really delighted today that we are going to be talking to three fantastic marketing leaders from around the world, who I will introduce in a second. But I'm also delighted that so many of you have dialed in today from around the world. So it would be lovely if you would come and say hello on the chat. As I can't see you, but I know you're there. Please come and just say hello and tell us where you're dialing in from today. And I have a question for you all, which I'd like you to answer on chat if you can. I'm interested to know, for those of you listening, what do you think the most important skill is for marketers right now? The number one skill that people need to be practicing, perfecting. What's the most important skill? I'd love you to come and say hello on chat and share your thoughts. And while you're doing that as well, just to let you know and to remind everybody, there is also the question and answer function on Zoom. We're going to be going through and having a great conversation with our speakers today, and then we will be also giving you the opportunity to ask them some questions. So please come onto the chat function and add your questions to the debate or your thoughts as we go. And please continue to use that chat function as we go through to add your comments, see what you disagree with, add any perspectives as you go. Hi Nick from London, it's lovely to see you there. Skill, the ability to deal with frequent change. Interesting one to talk about how you train for that and how you work on it. Madeir, analytic, to make sure that we're as analytic as possible. James, James from Search Metrics says understanding data is the most important skill at the moment for marketers. And Ali from Dubai, being able to adapt to changing customer needs. So there's a mix there of people looking at maybe leadership skills and adaptive agility, and quite a lot coming through around analytics and data and the importance of that. Agility, the agility ability, Alessandra, brilliant. Well, please keep adding your thoughts about what the most important skill is for marketers today. And then we are going to introduce now our speakers to come on and talk about how do we deal with this question of upskilling? What are the ways in which we do it to help upskill ourselves, our teams, and our company? So I'd now like to introduce my three amazing guests today. First of all, we have Wendy McEwen, who is Head of Marketing and Digital at Knight Frank. And Wendy is dialing in from Singapore and representing the APAC region. Hi, Wendy. And
Hi, also,
great to see you. And we also have the inimitable Mark Evans, who is representing the UK today, Managing Director Marketing and Digital from Direct Line. Hi, Mark.
Hey, Sophie. Great to be here.
Brilliant. And last but not least, of our guests today, we have Shireen Maneem, who is the Marketing Director, Beauty and Personal Care from Unilever, and she's representing the APAC region today and dialing in from Egypt. Hi, Shireen.
Hello, hi Sophie, hi everyone.
Great to have you all here today. Thank you so much for joining us on this conversation. So I suspect, knowing you all, that you will all have an opinion on this one. This easy question, which is, what do you think the most important skill marketers need right now? Wendy, perhaps we can start with you. Is there one particular skill you particularly think we need?
I agree with lots of what the attendees have mentioned in the chat, but I'd also say that confidence to experiment and to challenge the status quo. I think, you know, do differently, don't be afraid.
Very interesting, the confidence and how you teach that and get that. And we talk a lot about bravery, obviously, within the marketing society and what that means, and what drives bravery is often the confidence as well as the competence, isn't it? And
Absolutely.
Mark, what about you? I know you're a curious person and interested in skills. What do you think the most important skill for a marketer is right now?
Well, actually, you said it. It would be curiosity. I think we need to separate out the things that people know versus the way that they think about what they want to go on to know. The best marketing boss I ever had, Bruce McCall, who was global CMO for Mars for 10 years, said that it's the #1 asset of any decent marketer. There's always a brilliant insight just lurking around the corner waiting to be discovered that could transform a brand or a business, but also a person. You just got to be curious enough to go and find it. And he exampled that with the way that he brought all the Ehrenberg Bass stuff into Mars, which really, I think, helped Mars to succeed for 10 years. And it just started with a little bit of curiosity. So it's maybe not a skill, but I think it's the killer app. It comes for everything else. It defines which skills you go after.
Yeah. Yeah, and is it a skill? And it's certainly something you can practice and nurture, isn't it? I haven't looked this up, so it's the back of my mind, so I might get this wrong, but there's definitely an Einstein quote about, I'm not cleverer than another person, I'm just more curious. I'm pretty sure that's true, but the problem is when you say these sort of quotes, sometimes they're completely apocryphal. But yes, curiosity, making sure that that's there. Shireen, different perspective, what do you think the most important thing is right now?
Yeah, so let me first thank you for the great invite, and I'm absolutely delighted to speak to all our audience today in a very interesting conversation, actually, that is very close to my heart. And before I start, let me wish and hope everyone is sound and safe. For me, the most important skill for a marketeer, and based on many years of experience in the marketing field, is basically technology, and the use of data would become the cornerstone of the competitive edge of any organization. So I would say that data-driven marketing would be the one thing that today's marketeer needs to upskill himself to become, future fit today and tomorrow. And that's basically about the practice of the use of data in order to analyze, leverage data to understand how we can create the relevant content, repurpose our communication to address target consumer cohorts, and accordingly move the needle into throughout the journey into purchase. This is very important as we speak now, the use of data in marketing, because that's the way of doing marketing today.
Interesting. I think it's possible that those three skills are interlinked as well. That point about making sure there is the understanding of technology and data-driven, data-skilled marketing probably then gives you some confidence, but you only get to really understand that with the curiosity you need to make sure you're constantly learning about what technology can do for you. And a reminder, we're getting some comments, and keep commenting on chat. And a reminder to everybody that if you've got some questions that you'd like to put into the Q&A function, we'll be answering those as well. Yes, and Emma is 100% agreeing with you, Shireen, in terms of marketers needing to actually live and understand the universes they're spending money in as well. So we're talking about future skills and this question about how do we upskill and what should we be looking at? Shireen, for you, why is there this pressing need for upskilling to be so much part of what you think marketers should be doing?
Yes, so all of us know that technology and native digital talents will continue to disrupt and transform the future of work. Yeah, so we'll see lots of jobs being, displaced, lots of jobs being introduced, and lots of jobs will eventually disappear. So, for example, if I can put some facts on the table, as per McKinsey, there is almost over 130 million jobs that will be introduced by 2021 by what we call the fourth industrial revolution. This is massive. Yeah, so accordingly, the old assumptions has been overturned. We see that, as we all know, the largest taxi company owns no vehicles. The world's largest accommodation provider owns no real estate. So there is a kind of reality that we need to embrace. And there is, and we need to understand that we are in the middle of reskilling, a global reskilling emergency. Otherwise, we will turn out to be an outdated professionals. Yeah. So upskilling yourself and being up to date is what will make you a future fit leader, ready for all the revolution happening in the future of work.
So the age of acceleration in which we find ourselves, and an acceptance that it is moving so fast, gives us that urgency. I think there's a call to action there, though, around as an industry, making sure that the marketing industry remains fit for the future, and upskilling is part of it. But I guess it's not just a corporate responsibility, there's a personal responsibility involved in this. Mark, what have you been doing, or what ideas do you have for the audience about what we can do personally to upskill ourselves and make sure we're one step ahead?
Yeah, good question. Maybe just before I answer that, something Shireen said was quite interesting about acceleration and the fact that jobs are going to be different and not going to exist. Obviously, that notion's been around for a while, but I was actually out on a dog walk this morning and I bumped into a friend whose son is doing his final year of A-levels. And he's obviously very bright and he's going to university to do computer science. And I said, what's he going to do? Barry said, he doesn't know yet, that job doesn't exist. So 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 2 years ago, people were talking about this notion of in the future that will be the case. But here you are, somebody who's just about to start their university degree, believing that in 3 years' time, even, the job won't exist. Anyway, bit of a detour, but it was a nice dog walk. So personally, well, I mean, it links to the point about curiosity, just to expand on that, which is that it is arrogant to not realize that you need to be curious and continue to improve yourself. And that comes from a sporting metaphor, which is you're most vulnerable when you think you've sussed it. In fact, in sport, performance can continue to improve for a couple of years, even when the cracks are emerging, but they're just hidden or camouflaged by successful performance. So, I mean, stay paranoid is really the thing there. And so that's why I've been doing quite a lot around upskilling. There's also a role model factor here that if you don't, then who else is going to bother? But there's a number of things. So I've done a bit of back to school. So I did the Marketing Week mini MBA to relearn some things I learned a while ago. I also went on a storytelling course, which again is a refresher of a skill, but a pure mobile-based storytelling course, which was fascinating, and I learned a bit more science about some of the things I've maybe didn't know, and also doing a 360-degree feedback process. We're doing that as an exec as we move to agile, just to make sure you find your blind spots, because you don't know what you don't know until you do. And then the last piece actually is, as we go through agile, we're doing exco level. We've learned over 100 hours of exco level agile training, just to get ready to lead through the agile transformation. So quite a lot. And I suppose just being really efficient in substituting the commute time for stimulus, because it is the role of the marketer to bring the outside in, to bring the future forward. And so that's why I go on so much about eternal curiosity being so important. And then, of course, you've got to live that. Otherwise, it's just hollow words.
Yeah, and there's so many things that I think that tangible, here's an easy habit to put into your diary in terms of replacing the commute. I've heard that from a few people recently, and I think that's a bite-sized, easy way to make sure you're making time to learn. So a lot of people are missing listening to podcasts on their way in on the commute, but that can be replaced with a walk with your dog and listening to the podcast or finding opportunities there. But I think, Mark, that interesting point there about us really genuinely accepting that our children are going into a world where work is going to be so different means there's a mental agility we need there. We talk about agility generally, but that being comfortable with the ambiguity of not knowing what tomorrow's world is going to be gives that urgency to it. So your point, Shireen, about the emergency, and Mark, you're talking about staying paranoid. There is actually a pressure on this to get it right. But even the busiest people that I come across, the most successful people I come across and who are going to be busy are, like you, Mark, actually still making active time to say, right, well, I'd like to look at storytelling, and and continuing to build in the bite-sized learning and make sure it's there. I mean, Wendy, for you, I mean, there's so much been going on this year. Have you had the chance to do some things, and are the new skills you've been looking at?
Yeah, well, the brilliant thing as marketers, by showing up to any of this kind of activity, we're actually learning by doing, right? Speaking on a webinar enables us to learn about how to produce a better webinar. Speaking on different people's platforms enables us to learn about how different webinar tools actually work. So by agreeing to speak on a podcast, agreeing to participate as a speaker at an event, being part of an industry association, that has all given me insight out how to run webinars in my own business better, what platforms I might want to adopt to actually stay connected to our customers. So there's all these layers of, and how I'm given assets to promote my participation gives me ideas around how I can use those assets, create similar assets, from a speaker briefing to, which the excellent Siobhan does for the Marketing Society events, right? What a great template. Let's grab that template and use it internally. So you're always learning, right? Like by doing different events yourself and being part of different things, being part of associations, talking to your peers. It's been fantastic to be part of the Marketing Society, to be able to jump into practical learning from other practitioners around what they're doing and how they're implementing different things and what tools they're using. Earlier this year, I did a call out on the Marketing Society WhatsApp group for resources I needed, and you get that information back straight away, and there's nothing like peer recommendations. Yeah. For me personally, I'm also in a totally new industry. I'm just 18 months into the real estate industry. So I've been trying to unpack what prop tech actually means and what is the future of the industry. And obviously I could talk for an entire webinar about the future of work and the language being used in the physical environment around home worker versus office worker and hybrid worker. And as someone who used to work in technology and thinking about what Shireen just spoke to in terms of automation taking over jobs, when I hear people talking about, I want to work from home because I'm going to, what I'm doing doesn't require me to be in the office, to me is an automatic red flag of, okay, so you're ready to be replaced by automation and AI and say goodbye to your job. Like, I would never put my hand up to be 100% work from home worker, because I'm basically saying my contribution isn't, that valuable. So it's very dangerous to hear people who don't understand the future that technology may be bringing to their industries, labeling themselves based on the type of work they're doing right now. So for me personally, learning about what's going on in the industry is as important as learning about what's going on in the craft of marketing. So I've signed up to several courses as well, and connecting into, there's so much content available, so many events, so many podcasts, so many things we could never attend in the physical environment. I would never get to go to an event in the US, rarely get to come to events in the UK. So being able to, the Chief Martech's event last week was all virtual, all free. The DLD out of Israel, like, just there's never-ending amounts. The challenge is finding the time, as you mentioned. So really scheduling to be a part of these things so you can learn by doing. is a really good tip, I think.
Yeah, but yes, yeah, making sure they're scheduled in. But you're right. I mean, there are so many things that we know are difficult right now, but celebrating the fact there is a positive in right now we have access to much more. We can have these conversations, all of us together digitally like this. You know, our conference next week, which we're really excited about, the scale and the number of people who've signed up and the reach for it is so much bigger because we're not just holding it in London. But I do think that and I would pick up on this, of course, but the point about actually we learn from each other and the stories that we share and the tips in these kind of conversations by giving and by being part of a society or part of a conversation or whatever, it does feel like a shortcut, if you like, to upskilling ourselves.
So just to one point, I'm not to disagree too much, but interesting what Wendy says about I'm sort of putting my hand up to say I'm less valuable if I want to work from home. I'm not sure that so joined as that. You know, so we have got the Spotify Agile model, and each squad of 10, let's say, it's entirely up to them how they figure out their working patterns and approaches. And I think the COVID has taught us that we were only limited by our own beliefs in terms of what's possible virtually. Now, for sure, not everything. I do think culture is created in person. And I think, you know, for set piece moments and for certain things, there is no substitute for the magic of human interaction. But I think a lot more is possible than we thought. And so some form of hybrid model is probably the way to go. I'm just not entirely convinced that, you know, I think people can work effectively for long periods of time with the right tools, but not for everything. So just maybe a bit of a balance there.
It's the language that people were using to describe the, you know, the task that they were doing, right? And the way that people were describing. I worked for a technology company, so I had to sell AI and automation, and individuals saying, I can work from home on these days because I'm just going to do this, this, and this. It's manual process. It is literally the type of work that automation can easily replace. I totally get your point. It's the language people use and the failure to recognize the invisibility tax and their need to participate and show value, not so much whether or not they can. And I don't want to turn this into a you know, future of work debate, because it could easily slide into that, but it's more that people need to be conscious about, and this company was actually issuing contracts where people were putting their hand up to be a home worker, a hybrid worker, or an office worker. And to me, that's very dangerous if you don't understand how technology can enable, like Shireen was talking to, the automation. You know, we used to talk about automate the mundane so you can free your people to be innovative and you know, be able to focus on the strategic. And what I hear people every day talk about is, I can work from home because my job is mundane. And that's the danger. It's language.
Yeah, language. And it also gets into the questions about the skills we need to learn. And we're talking a lot about the importance of understanding technology, which we have to, but the future forecasts are that the point of differentiation will be amongst the softer skills, which as they're so pejoratively called, or being creative and innovative. So actually that's why perhaps learning about storytelling and that kind of thing is as important as making sure we're learning all sides of it all. I wanted to come back to this point about us, or how we're all using our time and the pressures on people about upskilling. One of the other things that's happened at the moment is we know there are quite a lot of people, and I know there'll be people who've dialed in today who are currently in between things. They're out of work, they've been furloughed, there's things changing. So the pressure on them or the opportunity to do things differently change. Mark, I'd like your perspective a little bit on what advice you'd give people who are looking at this about how they pivot or cope considering those changing circumstances.
Yeah, I'm very happy to talk to that. So the reason being, I've been made redundant 4 times. I've actually been made redundant really more than times I've actually had jobs, because I didn't start a graduate job. You know, anyway. And of course, it hurts. It's difficult when you go home and tell your 7-year-old daughter, you know, well, the role doesn't exist anymore, and she says, oh, what? So Dad, they just don't want you anymore. Anyway, and try to tell anybody that's been redundant, it's not personal. Of course it's personal. But the point is, many people will be experiencing redundancy, or might, or even have the fear of it. And so I talk quite openly to try and destigmatize it. because the reality is, a bit like Shireen said so excellently about the acceleration of the types of jobs, so it is the case that we will all probably be made redundant at least once in our life. So anyway, I mean, my perspective is actually, in the rear view mirror, it can be a gift, because you're likely to be moving to a better role, a more successful company, but very specifically because it does give you a moment of reappraisal that is forced. So it's uncomfortable, it's painful, there's no doubt there's a change curve, but actually in the rearview mirror, you get to refresh on the things you're really good at, where your value add is, what you enjoy. There's the Ikigai Japanese 4 quadrants thing. You don't sort of do that thinking stuff unless you're really forced to. So it's perhaps easy for me to say, because currently I'm employed, thankfully, but having been through the process a few times, it's so important to stay positive, stay focused, keep momentum, keep learning, which is why this is so rich as a conversation. But that forced pivot can actually be a gift. And good people, good things happen to good people. Most of the people here probably land jam side up, and it's not all just by chance.
Yeah, yeah. The seeing it as a pause, to pause, to think, to learn, and making the most of it, to see what else can happen. And interesting, you refer to the thinking about yourself and the Ikigai, which I can never pronounce properly, but understanding one's purpose and where that goes, or where you fit. Shireen, I know you've been doing lots of thinking about effective leadership and upskilling and staying future fit. And I know that thinking about the question of purpose will be important to you. What are your thoughts on how people should be looking at effective leadership from an upskilling point of view?
Yeah, so let me add a perspective here, hearing, Mark, and talking about curiosity, and hearing Wendy as well. So, and we are all, have all busy schedules, and you might not have the chance to have kind of structured trainings and upskilling programs in your companies, even if you're actually not employed currently. Still, you have the opportunity to upskill yourself. So let me add a perspective which I personally use, which is the intentional learning. Yeah, this is a very important skill, and a pressing skill that every and a person and a business leader needs to really adopt. And that's basically the practice of using every experience as a learning opportunity and developing your instinctive everyday approach to upskilling. Yeah, so make use of every situation, make use of every conversation. So I'm now learning and unlearning, hearing Mark and hearing Wendy and hearing yourself, really building my experience and really getting very valuable perspective from experienced people. So how we can really use all the opportunities and interactions that we can have into a learning opportunity every day. Yeah, you don't need to lock a certain specific time. This is the time where I will upskill myself. It doesn't need to be like this. What does it take? It takes two things. One, growth mindset. Have that right mindset of bringing out your best self and becoming a better version of yourself every day. Two is that curiosity mindset that Mark told us about. So you don't actually, you pause and you learn and you unlearn. And then you really develop and upskill yourself in areas that you might have heard of for the first time. So that's basically a perspective that I personally use, while we do have a very structured upskilling programs in Unilever. And this is something that, the beauty about this company is that it really invests in its people. But, from a personal perspective, you have the responsibility of upskilling yourself with the simplest way possible, which is the intentional learning.
I love the expression intentional, because it's very easy for us all to go, yes, I want to, but making time for it. I think there's quite a lot of theory out there about 5 hours a week. So Bill Gates and various people talk about 5 hours a week dedicated to learning. The leaders are readers perspective. I interviewed an amazing entrepreneur for our conference for next week, who was talking about the fact that his way of staying connected was absolutely to keep reading, and making sure there is time for that to constantly learn. But it has to be intentional, because otherwise the to-do list takes over, right? And trying to find moments to do that and be intentional about it. But I think the other point there is, we're talking a bit about how we do it ourselves, and also how we help our teams through it. I mean, Wendy, have you identified some areas within your teams where you've had to upskill at pace? Is there an active plan there around that?
I wouldn't say it was certainly not as structured as I'm sure Unilever are, but one of the things we do is teach each other, you know, and so we try to take the time to when we see something someone's done in a country or in a service line that we really want to celebrate or learn from, you know, do those brown bag sessions internally and walk through what did you do, why did it work, what did work, what didn't work. When COVID first, you know, I work in an industry that I think has never done a webinar until 2020. Do you know what I mean? Like, it was very, very common. Physical events were everywhere, but digital events were very rare. So back in March, I called in a couple of friends, one from On24, which was the platform we were onboarding, and one from my ex-company, who I had done a lot of webinars with previously as a speaker, and he was the producer. And we did a mini webinar on webinars and how you create content pre, during and post for virtual events, because I knew that many people I was working with around the region literally had never done these kind of things before. So it's tapping your network for expertise, like we already talked about, and then finding courses, events. You know, as I said before, lots of things are available. You know, LinkedIn Learning was available for free for quite a while there. And so Microsoft Teams was another one that we needed to rapidly upskill a lot of people on. And so how do you, speaking to that Spotify model of collaboration, and the technology might be available, and this is very common for all sorts of technology, right? Even though you have the technology in the business, it doesn't mean that people know how to use it or know how to use it effectively. And when I was a seller of tech, you know, most marketing tech that people buy, they only use 20 to 30% of the capacity. Very few customers are actually 70 to 80%, you know, adopters of any particular tool. So that real ability to step through what are the basics, what's the advanced, how do you really get outcomes from using these types of tools, what is the business trying to do with it. And I think with collaboration tools like Slack and Teams, people are still using, you know, they know how to use it for VC and they know how to use it for chat, but how do you really use all the other features is something we're still training people in. So I think practical application, sharing case studies, show and tell, and then finding external courses. And I think Coursera, LinkedIn Learning, industry associations are very practical ways to look for that. And asking your customers as well has been another thing I've spent a lot of time doing.
To have those conversations. Yeah, and it's interesting that focuses on also understanding how technology can then be used for this. So as Mark says, it's going to be a hybrid model moving forward. We've got to make sure we understand how to continue to build relationships, but also that the point there about one of the quickest shortcuts is to ask your network, you know, to borrow the brains of somebody else. Where have you learned? Can you help me? And it's been really interesting seeing that happen in the last few months amongst the community that we're in. Mark, what do you think the role is then for a leader in terms of empowering their teams to upskill, and how do you encourage and make sure that happens?
Well, and I think I've sort of said before, you know, you've got to practice what you preach, and I think you have to demonstrate your own desire and ambition to improve and to have a growth mindset and to sign up for lifelong learning. Otherwise, you can't really expect others to do that. You know, and it's only from that position, I think, that you can be a high expectations boss, which is, again, you know, I picked up from, I think it was Bruce again, it was somebody in Mars back in the day. Be a high expectations boss. Say to people, I expect a lot from you, but I believe in you, and ultimately I've got your back. You know, those are quite motivating words, but they can only come from a place where you're really pushing yourself and having high expectations of yourself as well. So I think there's some really interesting stuff in the chat from Emma about, you know, somebody who's involved in media doesn't even have an Instagram account. So again, you know, so one of the things I've started a few months ago with an old friend is to do a webinar show on a Friday morning, 8 AM UK time, if anybody wants to watch it. It's
brilliant one.
We've had some good guests. We've had Paul Polman, we've had Mark Ritson. I wouldn't have 6 months ago have possibly imagined that'd be something that I'd be doing every Friday. But it says to other people, you know, you've got to explore things, try things, test things in a way that, you know, you don't know what the outcomes will be. So I think it is that sort of partly a bit of carrot, show the way, a bit of stick, have high expectations. Because ultimately what you really want is people to own their own personal development. And it is the most bloody frustrating thing that many people don't. Many people think they're going to have a course, or it's going to be spoon-fed, or there's going to be a pathway, as opposed to careers are bloody hard things. They're squiggly and they take a lot of effort and determination. And so probably the biggest role is just to try and get that belief in the importance and that ownership in the journey itself.
Yeah, the belief and symbolizing it. Shireen, what about at Unilever? How have you managed to get everybody embracing upskilling? Are there some things you've done that you can share with us?
Yeah, I can share a very interesting initiative that I personally love to take part in. We created something called Learning Marathon, because we're a great believer that, you know, upskilling and people's development is actually the only way to win. So basically, this Learning Marathon was called Learn for a Cause, in collaboration with UNICEF, in partnership with UNICEF. And that's basically, we asked people, anyone who completes a 15 course that is addressing the top 3 skills of this function will have the chance to we will donate on his behalf to the UNICEF in order to give one child a good quality of education, access to a good quality of education. So what could be better than developing yourself and learning and bringing a brighter future to a child who doesn't have access to a good quality education? So actually, we have seen massive traction out of this initiative, and lots of people really around the organization got involved in this initiative. Other initiatives, we do a lot of things, like we created something called Unilever Ted Talks, where we bring some of the expertise from around the world in Unilever to speak about a certain topic that is very important in the current crisis. Another initiative, which is a kind of informal initiative that we have created in our function, a series of mind-stretching talks. So over a cup of tea or a cup of coffee, as a team, we come together, we bring in an external speaker who talks about a very important topic as well in the current time, and give us his fresh and external perspective to that. So there are a number of initiatives actually, and one of the things that Unilever focused on during times of crisis is actually developing and upskilling people, because that's the best time to face adversity and uncertainty through upskilling your team and your people.
And the energy it gives people when they're learning as well, and it really does. I think it's interesting. So we're talking about, we've talked about role modeling, but also making it as easy as possible. So setting those things up for people, if you've got the talks, if that's happening, and making it rewarding if there is a psychological benefit and that you're giving back to other people as well as doing it yourself. A very clever way of making sure that, there is that good feeling about helping yourself do well, but helping others at the same time. It's great. We've been talking quite a lot today about this idea of actually not just getting people to be curious, but getting people to understand the need for speed and what's going on in terms of the great acceleration. Mark, you've talked a bit there about being agile, and clearly it's important to you. I mean, how do we structure both agility and ability into the mix to ensure the right balance? And are there some initiatives and changes you've been working on to try and make sure that there is that innovation and sense of comfort with risk inside the culture?
Yeah, so just to say a bit on agile, so many companies, probably all on this webinar, will be doing through some form of agile transformation. We started about 5 or 6 years ago, and on the basis of some of the success, we recognised that this was the answer to the meta trends around need for innovation and Darwinian gales. And so we have gone the whole hog. So all head office, moving from, I don't know, like 10 to 100 squads, the Spotify way. As a reaction to the context we face. I mean, it's still early days, so I can't say that we've cracked it yet. But we think that that's really the answer to a lot of the challenges that we face. And it does raise quite an interesting point from the context of upskilling, because we're now asking people to be much more T-shaped. Although I heard of something from McKinsey the other day I'd never heard of before. We now apparently need to be M-shaped, so we need to have sort of multiple specialisms. Anyway,
trademark, T and an M.
There you go. Yeah, so that's quite a big thing in an agile context. It's people need to go through a bit of a change curve, and I did it as well. I'd only just joined the Exco when we said we're going to go agile, and therefore all of marketing and digital capability is going to be completely federated. But for individuals, it is a different career path, whether it's T or M, but letting go of some of their sort of discrete ownership of a capability across the whole organization. More generalist, less expertise. So I think that's an interesting thing to throw into this conversation, you know, the bit about how do people, you know, become marketing experts, but still maintain the T or the M, because really organizations' needs are going to be much more fluid. And therefore, you know, you yourself have got to be pretty much more accepting of that fluidity.
I mean, it's super, sorry,
Wendy.
That's a super interesting question, because I'm 18 months into a new organization, and I was hired to do marketing, comms and digital, and I hired people to do data, content and distribution kind of thing. And I'm questioning 18 months in whether that was, you know, because to me it starts with the story, and then whether there's a PR angle, a social media angle, a client comms angle, or an internal comms angle, you know, like there's all these layers to the story, but the story needs to, you know, an event angle, whatever the case may be. It starts with what are you trying to say to the customer, and why should they care about it? Do you know what I mean? And so I wanted talent who, you know, thought about what the angle was, and then we would work together on making sure we could execute, whether it was an email, you know, an EDM, or a or social media messaging, or an event, etc., or PR. And it is complex, Mark, as you say, that T versus M, in terms of there's a lot of skills you need to be able to do all of those things, right? From the story itself and understanding what the angles are and why they matter, and the customer and why the customer would care, to the distribution and the packaging in all those different environments for those, you know, different audiences or different recipients in different formats and platforms. So it is very much what's the best way to do it? Because if you don't go deep, are you not going to do it as well? Or will you always skew to what your actual skill set is? So if you come from a BR background, will you always skew to PR? Versus if you come from a content marketing background, will you always skew to owned kind of distribution?
I think, Wendy, you've 100% hit the nail on the head, right at the heart of this whole upskilling conversation. It hadn't occurred to me until you said it, which is that, you know, in an agile, if everyone accepts that agile is coming, because it seems sort of inevitable. Everyone said the world would go lean, it didn't. Everyone says the world will go agile, and probably will. But, you know, it starts with the mission, and the mission can be fulfilled in many different ways. And, you know, pull from the backlog, here's our mission for the next sprint, or whatever it is. And you have to be agnostic. And so I think if people who don't really fundamentally accept the need to have a broader set of skills and continue to upskill, will be worthless in an agile squad, because they'll just be a dead weight. They won't be able to turn their hand to whatever is required. And so, yeah, I'm great point, Wendy.
Yeah, but that gives us a totally constantly transforming world, where actually those people who can navigate who have the ability to cope with agility are the ones that will be able to ride those waves. But being attentive to what do I need to develop, and having that open mind to that is not something that perhaps we train people for in school, or comes naturally to people in the workplace. So that is a big change and a big challenge. Shireen, I know in Unilever you've been looking at lots of things when it comes to pace, and, you know, looking at trying to get that agility and taking risks around it all. Are there some things there that you've done that you think are related to this?
Yeah, so I totally agree with Mark and Wendy. So those who are able to pivot quickly are those who are able to win in uncertainty and in times of crisis. what the history told us is that there is a kind of, economic impact and inevitable recession that is coming our way. And as business leaders and marketeers, we need to pick those trends, yet preempt those trends and move very fast through introducing innovations in a much faster manner to meet the market demand. So what we did, I'll give you an example of what we did in Unilever. At the time of the COVID outbreak, what we looked at is that we really moved very quickly to pivot our portfolio into the hygiene segment, because there was a fact that a simple hand washing act can save a life. So that was, a purpose, an intrinsic purpose that we moved with. And we very quickly, the team did a brilliant job. In just a few weeks, we actually opened 13 new markets. We opened up 10 new manufacturing facilities for the hygiene product, just to make sure that we keep the supply of those hygiene products to our people and make sure that we save as much lives as we can. So, and this gives a very important perspective, which is leading with purpose. And how can you, through your business and your brands, really create that positive impact to the society that you're serving? The world needs more leaders and entrepreneurs to reinvent the growth and create a positive impact. It's not anymore doing business, it's doing business by doing good to the society and to the environment around us. And that's what really drove us very fast to pivot our actions and save the people that we serve in our region.
It goes back to Mark's. Once you've got that mission, once you've got the what are we aiming for, it's then easier for people to work out, well, how do we get there? And interestingly, we talk about the entrepreneurs and that side of it. Having looked at a lot at how do we get that sense of pace and get it right, there is that learning from others and the belief we talked earlier about, knowing that anything is actually possible. Helps you work out that you can try different things and approach it in different ways. There's a mindset there. So sharing the stories around what people have done and how it's possible is perhaps just one of the ways in which we can allow ourselves to be more skilled at believing that these things are possible and that things, this year we've certainly seen that things can be done fast, right? What do we do as we move into a period where a lot of countries are going to be suffering from a recession and marketing and leadership that's needed to take people out commercially? It's going to be very important. Are there anything for any of you in terms of the skill set around the real commercial basis of what's going on and making sure that everybody is really understanding that? Are there certain things you've been looking at to make sure your teams or your organization is really grounded in that understanding?
Yeah, absolutely. So in crisis time and the economic downturn or recession that we might face, it's very important to retain your P&L sanity and your business sanity through maximizing your cash. So cash in this tough time would be the oxygen that will make the business survive. And this is a commercial acumen skill that you need to upskill yourself and your team towards it by maximizing the revenue out of every unit sold. And there are lots of techniques in doing that with the right portfolio, right pricing, maximizing your your channel mix or your portfolio mix, and really aligning your trade with high growth segments and spaces. This is very important to keep the business going. So while we're doing and all the other skills, but there is a commercial skill that is very important that needs to keep the business going and keep the cash in the business maximized.
Yeah, that's really good answer for me. Just to build upon that, we take graduates into our function all the time. You're on the a rotational basis, and actually just before lockdown I met a guy who came in and he'd come from procurement, and I said, how did you feel about moving into marketing? And he looked a bit sheepish and he said, well, to be honest with you, I was quite nervous because I was really rubbish at drawing at school. And And I think as soon as he said it, he sort of tried to take the words back in his mouth. And then he did say, and I've been really impressed with how analytical and data-driven it is, but, you couldn't take it back. But I think, the first job I was made redundant from that I hadn't even started was in banking. So I think I always come from it from quite a commercial perspective. But there's a credibility thing. The job to convince an organization that marketing, particularly in a service business, probably easier in Unilever, frankly, but that marketing is anything other than a colouring function, is that job is never done. So there's a few things around that. Of course, we do run internal sort of commercial training. We always say, if you're really proud of your ad, show your mum, don't show the board, show them the numbers. But I think that it's a bigger risk now, as Shireen points out, that marketing could be marginalised. Because it's not as commercially valuable and knowing as it has been. Marketing can also be marginalised because it's not right at the heart of the D&I conversation, or because it's not right at the heart of the climate conversation. Marketing is always a vulnerable function because the default for many non-execs and CFOs is that it's a cost rather than investment. So I think we have to respect that context. And so Shireen's given the content there, but I think the context is, the job to convince people that marketing is a value add is never, ever done.
No. And is at the heart of what we believe, and part of these conversations are about bringing us all together to make sure that we can share those stories and stand up for the role it will have in the future. Sorry, Wendy, you were going to say?
I was just going to pick up on Mark's point. I think in a B2B environment, your people are your brand. And so enabling your sellers to be more visible and to stay visible and to be more useful to their clients in an environment like this is everything. So going back to the professional services context, traditionally marketing, the value of marketing is totally not understood. But if you invest in marketing individual sellers and helping them be more visible, they will very quickly understand the value you bring.
So interesting. I love this bit where we look at the perspective from, three completely different industries here, three completely different parts of the world, and all united by, the realization that actually marketing needs to be talked about and shared, and for people to understand really what the value is and what it will be done. And that is linked to the upskilling, that's linked to everything that we're talking about today. I'd just like to ask each of you, if I may, for those people listening, when they're thinking about upskilling themselves, their teams, or what's essential for the company and what's going on, what would be the one piece of advice or the thing you would urge them to do? Shireen, what do you think?
Yeah, a simple advice that is the result of so many years in marketing. So take charge of your development. You are the only person responsible of bringing out your best version. Gone the days where the career progression is viewed with the lens of, vertical progression. Career progression is about diversifying your experience, is about upskilling, about exposing yourself to the more you bring richness to your profile, the more you can really progress within your career. So please stay safe, stay fit for the future, and take time to upskill yourself.
Brilliant way of putting it. Thank you. Wendy, thoughts for people listening? What would be the one thing you would urge everybody to think about?
Well, picking up on what Shireen said around, making yourself as rich as possible, I've personally invested in completely different industries and completely different types of roles. I used to be a managing director and a business leader, and now this is my first ever job with a marketing job title, even though I've worked with marketers for 20 years. I worked in a technology company so I could understand marketing tech, and ended up understanding tech and transformation across entire businesses. Now I work in a totally different industry, and I'm submerged in that future of work conversation, both from the physical and the digital context. So I think don't be afraid. Don't invest in a linear career path. Invest in working in with people, industries and companies that are going to help you grow, and finding talent to help you grow as well. Don't expect to always learn from people in your own company. from people above you or peers. You know, acknowledge that you can learn from interns as much as you can learn from the CEO. Acknowledge that I can learn from Shireen as much as I can learn from my competitor in the industry. So just be open and always be curious, always be learning, always be experimenting.
I love that. And that bit of not just learning from where you are, but looking up and around, the peripheral vision you need to make sure where the ideas can come, and keep learning. A lot of you have talked as well about keep learning and unlearning and being open to that. And Mark, you know, apart from sharing the link to the Friday session with everybody, which is obviously a good thing to encourage everybody who wants to keep learning, what else would you urge everybody to just make sure they're thinking about, or your final piece of advice for everyone today?
Yeah, I realised I was bad at multitasking. Well, actually, I knew this already. I will send it to you, or maybe, yeah, we can do that off.
Share it.
Well, I mean, what Shireen said is bang on. You know, if you don't own it, who will? Obviously, I said curiosity at the beginning. So maybe just add one layer on top of that, which is that many people fall into a bit of victim mode around their development and career progression. Think they might be entitled to stuff that doesn't come, and then get a bit disillusioned. And so actually, a bit of advice would be, there's a great book, it's quite a heavy one, called Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. Which, you know, you're nodding.
What a recommendation.
Many people have read that. I've read it a few times. It was actually on my daughter's psychology A-level reading list, so that brought me back to it again. And it talks to somebody in Auschwitz who, you know, great story, and I won't go into any detail, but the net of it was that in any circumstance, you choose your attitude. It's inescapable, it's inevitable, it's undeniable. And so in the knowledge of that, you know, it's really down to you to choose your attitude around learning, and don't expect too much from others. You know, I won't repeat what Shireen says because she captured it perfectly, but it really is your own attitude and your own thinking around your own development that really matters the most.
Brilliant. And the Viktor Frankl reference is a great one. I would add there's another book by a contemporary of Viktor Frankl. I can't remember her name, but the book's called The Choice, and it's the same key message, but it's a story of the life of somebody who went through some incredibly tough times and what she then learnt, and was a psychologist later in life. So highly recommended alongside the Viktor Frankl one as well. I'll make sure I find that one. Brilliant. Some really interesting perspectives from different parts of the world, from different people. Thank you so much, everybody, for sharing that and for stimulating everyone's thinking around what we can do to upskill in a crazy time, and why it is urgent that we make sure we're doing it personally, that we think about how to enable it for teams, how to make it easy for people, and to keep that encouragement there, and how we make it easy to build it in as a habit, whether it's a commute listening to Mark's session, or whether it's you know, sessions where we're bringing people together to learn. It's very much, thank you, Nick, The Choice, Edith Eger, brilliant book. This is very much at the heart of what we believe, and one of the reasons why I love being part of the Marketing Society in this community, that opportunity for us to come together, to have the connections and the conversations, to share the inspiration and the ideas, which helps us all keep learning and want to keep learning and want to do more to make sure that marketing is fit for a very, very complicated and changing future. So thank you so much, Shireen and Mark and Wendy, and to everybody who's been listening today. It's been terrific. I've got a couple of things to encourage everybody else to keep learning and to keep joining us for some things we've got coming up. Next Wednesday, very excitingly, it's our annual conference for the Marketing Society. It is an incredible lineup of speakers. I would really, really recommend you check it out. There are also opportunities throughout the day for you to connect and have conversations with different people across the world, which right now I think we need more than ever. So please do check it out. We've got entrepreneurs and energizers, we've got storytellers, and really great people. Next Wednesday, please do join us if you've not already got a ticket for that. And if you fancy an evening where there's a little bit of positivity and uplift, on the 25th of November, we have an evening of celebrations, connections and conversations, where we're going to party like it's not 2020. We've got the opportunity there to celebrate the brand of the year, the Brave brand of the year. There are votes going on right now on campaign and on the Marketing Society website for which of 20 brands will take that coveted prize. We've got some entertainment there and some great opportunities for connections as well. And last but not least, please do keep checking out what we're offering the Marketing Society in terms of actually actively upskilling, in terms of some of the programs we've got around Accelerate. There's a by marketers, for marketers, with marketers, Marketing Society's accelerated learning program. And we are adding great masterclasses and programs to that week by week, and we're just about to make a big announcement about another one coming up in February next year. So lots of things to keep looking out for. Please do join us as much as you can. Thank you so much, everybody, for listening today. Thank you very much, Wendy, Mark and Shireen, and stay curious, stay safe, everybody. Bye.